and welcome everyone to a brand new edition of Science, Philosophy, and Metaphysics with Dr. Pandit. I'm your co-host here, Patrice DeLisser, here at Living Manor Church, and we are so grateful and happy to have you guys tune in for a brand new. Yes, we are live again. Last week, Pastor Dr. Pandit was away on a speaking engagement, but he is back with us live here in studio to bring us a brand new presentation tonight on postmodernism. So you definitely want to make sure you lock in and have those ears and eyes and ears open, pencils out for questions, and you can post those in the comments. As usual, please make sure that you share and copy this link with your friends and family and those who are interested in having discussions like this. This is going to be a night that they will not want to miss. As always, we want to thank you for being a part of our series on a weekly basis. And we're so grateful for all the feedback that we have gotten week after week and toward the presentation presented by Dr. Pandit. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So at this time, we're going to bring our host, the illustrious Dr. Pandit.
Hello and welcome again. Good to be back, especially those of you who have been following us during the weeks that have gone by, and those of you who are joining us for the first time. Welcome. You're more than welcome. So, without any further ado, we'll just get into the slides and have our session for today. So, there you see the topic is kind of big words there: postmodernism, relativism, and pluralism. It's like, so many syllables, they kind of get mixed up. But if you look at them carefully, you will be able to understand them. We'll go through them one by one so that we understand what is happening. By the way, we are shifting out from the initial uh, topics that we had. And so before getting away, let's do a short review. We were doing in controversial topics like, is there a God? And in those circumstances, you'd be willing to study as well as quote and cite the opposing view. In other words, look at both. Be a neutral inquirer. And a neutral inquirer looks at two or three of the theories out there, not just one, for or against. Look at both. Why do we look at both? Because the only way in metaphysics to address and to assess is to do what is called the weight of evidence. We have no proof in these topics. We should look at the weight of evidence. And to look at the weight of evidence, you should look at both sides. Both sides have evidence. The question is, which one is heavier? And to do that, we should create a good atmosphere for neutral inquiry. And what do we need for that? Four factors. Each of them are extremely important: humility, honesty, calmness, and respect. These are not just words, not just ideas, they are real practical factors. So, the only way we can understand them the best is if we utilize them. So I hope that during the last few weeks or any time you were able to remember that when you are in a controversial topic discussion, that you use these four factors that help us go through in a smooth manner. The big question: does God really exist? And we said we have to be fair and look at both the sides. So how do we do that? The pan process. Look at both sides. You see on your screen, column one, arguments for atheism, against theism, for theism, against atheism. In other words, we're looking at both for and against. One side, for and against the other. In other words, we're playing it fair. And when we played it fair, the overwhelming evidence, the weight of evidence, God exists, is a scientific, rational, and credible claim. But this was challenged by the theory of evolution, so we went there. Here we go. Why would we look at the theory of evolution? Here's a question. If the theory of evolution has a reasonable and scientific base, then the study of nature could show that God is not needed. Deism is probably true, and we may even claim that we don't need God at all. So maybe he's not in existence. However, B, if it is not reasonable and scientific, then the study of nature could endorse the claim that God is essential in our universe. He's the one who started it and who's sustaining it. And therefore, the idea, concept, and God Himself is factual and in existence. And when we looked at the theory of evolution, we looked at it in two ways. One was the fundamental claims, and we saw 6 or 7 of them. None of them were established. And then we checked whether the theory of evolution was actually scientific. We looked at the criteria that are required to be met so that it is scientific, and we found that none of the fundamental claims are established, and the theory of evolution fails as a scientific theory. It is not a scientific theory. Having settled that now, we will agree that God does exist. Now, right in the beginning, if you notice that opener, once we agree whether God exists, then we should start looking for his identity. Who is he? What is his name? And so we start, first of all, looking at two factors in modernism. One is called relativism. It's also called postmodernism. It is the claim that all statements on earth are only relatively true. So my truth is no better and worse or worse than your truth, and nobody can say what is the truth. There's no such thing as absolute truth. In other words, facts are not really facts. They could be questionable. Any fact. For example, if I placed a pen, I place this pen on the table and I place it on my left. Which side of the table is the pen on? Immediately you'll know that it depends. It depends on which side of the table you are on. If you're on my side, then it's on the left side of the table. But if you're on the opposite side, it's on the right side of the table. So left became right and right is left. So which is this side? Well, if you're standing on this side, then this side is this side and that side is that side. Whereas if you are standing on that side, then this side is actually that side and that side is this side. Can you see what's happening? The moment you say that a fact is dependent on another factor, it depends. And so that's what the relativists say, everything depends. And they extrapolate that out and say all statements on earth are of that quality. You can't say it is the truth. Left side can become right side can become left side. There is no objective standard by which truth may be determined, so that truth varies with individuals and circumstances. And here's a statement by Paul Feyerabend, who says there is only one principle that can be defended under all circumstances and all stages of human development. It is the principle anything goes. I have underlined those words because we're going to come back to it. Remember, postmodernism says anything goes. So, is that true? In other words, what they are claiming is that all so called truth is only relatively true. There is no such thing as absolute truth. So, now we've got to decide what is absolute truth. Now, we're not talking about absolute in the sense of the ultimate. We are talking about absolute truth for our existence. So we need to give a definition of absolute truth in our existence. And here is one such definition: that which is valid for all people at all times in all places. So note, once you say that, every statement is not absolute truth. And so we do have absolute truth as well as relative truth. So this idea agrees that relative truth is also a real concept, but disagrees with the point and the claim that says that every statement on earth is only relatively true, which is actually the basis of relativism. So here's what relativism says: every statement on earth is only relatively true, not absolutely true. In other words, it's not a fact. So we'll examine it in a moment. Number one, anything goes, though, you remember that statement? Anything goes. It's the same as everything is acceptable. So, what's the meaning of everything? Is anything left out? No, nothing is left out when you use the word everything. Therefore, is everything, if everything is acceptable, then absolute truth also should be acceptable. The moment you say anything goes, you have to agree its meaning is everything goes. And once you say everything goes, well, then absolute truth is also acceptable. And once one absolute truth comes in, relativism is gone, because the claim of relativism is that every statement on earth is only relatively true. Number two, anything relatively true could also be relatively false. Then falsehood could be true, and truth could be falsehood. In other words would have no fixed meaning. That which is true could be also false. What is false could also be true. But have a look at that sentence. Words have would have no fixed meaning. Think about that, my friends, for just a moment. Words have no fixed meaning. Do you know that sentence uses those words with fixed meaning to say what it wants to say? If it has no fixed meaning, then we could have said, instead of words, we could have said lollipops. Lollipops have no fixed taste. No, that's not what it said. It said words have no fixed meaning. In other words, that sentence itself requires every word to have a fixed meaning. Number three, if we speak only of a word or a fact being relatively true, then suppose a person says A. Well, A could be true or false. So now we need factor B to decide whether A should be taken true or false. But then B also is not set. So we have to figure out whether B should be taken true or false before applying it to A. And once you do that, then you'll have to agree that B itself is in question. So we have to go to factor C. Factor C has to be settled out whether it should be true or false, and then apply to B. And then you go down to D, E, F, and on and on. It's called infinite regression. We regress from the first question that we asked. So if we are regressing, think, we would not be able to ask questions because we're using words and every word is not settled yet. Can't answer any of them because those words that we're going to use to answer also are not settled this way or that way, because the infinite regression is still carrying on. What was spoken 1,000 years ago, we still have to figure out which place we are on and whether that factor should be taken as true or false. Can you see what's happening? Infinite regression still going on. We can't use any word. You can't go to school, college, because what you're being taught there may be true, may be false as well. You see, it's a self-defeating statement. So it looks like any apparent suggestion of relativism is either self-defeating or else is not a real assertion, but something more like an empty slogan, because you cannot apply it in life. Everyone, when you go to the store, for example, to the grocery store, we realize that this is the cost of this item. We don't say it could be true or it could be false. If that's the case, you can't even do a single thing. You can't have a single conversation. You can't state a single fact. To say it's true that nothing is true is intrinsically meaningless nonsense. The very statement there is no absolute truth is an absolute truth. So relativism does not stand scrutiny. The postmodern idea that you have your truth and mine is mine and yours could be true or false, mine also could be true or false, that leads us into a quagmire from which you can't escape. And so we'll have to agree that relativism does not make good sense. It does not make good intellectual sense. In other words, we do have statements we can call facts and truth. So now we have agreed, and so let's look for truth. using the words that we want to use, which are reasonable. For example, can we identify God? We've used some words which everyone knows have a fixed meaning. Does he have a name? Does he have some characteristics? So let's take a break while we think about this. All right, let's carry on. So now relativism is out. We are looking now at truth. So there is some truth. So when we look, and we are talking about religious truth for now and for this session. So when you look all over the world, you find, look at the screen: Zoroastrianism, Buddhism, Islam, Judaism, Sikhism, Christianity, Hinduism, Taoism, Shintoism, Confucianism. I mean, how many are there? So we have to figure out which of these. Now, when you look at a list like this, by the way, that list is a small part of the actual big list. So it's kind of daunting. How are we going to figure out? So I began to ask people, what do you think of this big list? And as I spoke, I realized the answers fell into two camps, clear cut camps. Here are they. Camp number one is called exclusivism. And here's what they say in that camp: there are many religions, but only one is right, mine. So when more than one person says that, it becomes pretty confusing. So exclusivism is, yes, there are many, but there's only one that's right, and that is mine. Pluralism, on the other hand, same, almost the same idea to start off with. Yes, there are many religions, but you needn't bother to check them out. All the religions are actually the same. Plural, more than one. Can you see the difference? Both of them say there are many. Both of them say that there are so many, but don't be bothered. The first one, exclusivism, says leave out the others, just take mine. And pluralism says, yes, there are many, and all of them are equal. Don't bother about figuring out which one. So when I faced this, I looked at pluralism first. You know why? Because if pluralism is right, then I don't have to bother about anything. I'm happy where I am. So let's look at pluralism. It says all religions lead to God. They are different paths, but end up at the same final destination. Here's a statement. W.E. Hawke says this: God is in the world where Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad are in their little closets, and we should thank them but never return to them. Zen is the mystic form of Buddhism. And this is what they say: to understand God is to listen. Listen to Jesus and Muhammad and Buddha, but don't get caught up in the names. Listen beyond them. Listen to God's breath. It sounds so exotic and it sounds so appealing, that sentence. But we have to look at it carefully. So, pluralism recognizes not only the existence of other religions, but their intrinsic equal values. Do you know that has to be a part of pluralism? They are not only valid and true, but equally so. Pluralism has to make this claim so as to maintain its position of being pluralistic. For if it did not say that all of them are same, then they would have to confess they're not equal. And if that's the case, then I would ask, I want the best. So please show me the best. And that would lead us back straight into exclusivism, which says that there's only one way. And pluralism is trying to avoid that by saying they're all equal. So it has to say all of them are equal. But here's a big question: where did the idea of pluralism come to us? Is it in the writings? So I looked at the writings. Let's take a break. All right, I said let's look at the writings. So here are the writings. Hinduism, I'm quoting from the Bhagavad-Gita, which is a part of a large epic called the Mahabharata, and everybody recognizes that the Bhagavad-Gita holds actually the core of classical Hindu thought. So here are the words, and the picture over there is of Krishna, who is the main person speaking in the Bhagavad Gita. I am the goal, the upholder, the master, the witness, the home, the shelter, and the most dear friend. I am the creation and the annihilation, the basis of how much? Everything, the resting place and eternal seed. And in the introduction to the Bhagavad Gita, here are the words. It's written actually originally in Sanskrit. So here it's how it sounds in Sanskrit. Ekam Sastram Devaki Putra Gitam, meaning let there be one scripture for the whole world, Bhagavad Gita. Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva. Let there be one God for the whole world, Sri Krishna. Eko Mantras Tasya Namani. Let there be one hymn, one mantra, one prayer, the chanting of his name. So it's very clear what they're trying to say. There's only one. Allah in Islam, in Quran, in Surah 2, chapter 2, Ayah 255, verse 255. This is known as the coronation or the regal verse of the Quran, describing Allah and his position. Allah, there is no God but He, the living, the self subsisting supporter of all. His are all things in the heavens and on earth. His throne doth extend over the earth. He is the Most High, the Supreme. Buddhism, this Lord, meaning Gautama Buddha, is truly the Arhat. Arhat is a person who has reached the ultimate state of attainment, fully enlightened, perfect in his knowledge and conduct, well gone, world knower, unsurpassed, leader of men to be tamed, teacher of gods and men, the Buddha, the Lord. Sorry, where did we? Here we go. Judaism, for thus saith the Lord, who created the heavens. Are you listening? Listen to what I'm going to now say. Thus saith the Lord who created the heavens, who is God, who formed the earth. I am the Lord, and there are about half a dozen others. No, that's not what it says. I am the Lord, and there is no other. Christianity, there is no other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. Did you notice the trend? I did not find a single religion that claimed the others to be equal alternatives. Every religion claims itself to be the only way, the only one to be correct, exclusively correct. Not only do they make that claim of being exclusively correct, but they point to the faults of the other religions. For example, the Buddha held this belief in a permanent self or soul is one of the most deceitful delusions ever held by man. You know what he's talking about? He's talking about the Hindu concept of the super soul and the eternal soul. He's saying that idea is a deceitful delusion. This is Gautama Buddha. Judaism, look at the claim of Judaism. Understand that I am He. Before me there was no God form, nor shall there be after me. In other words, one sentence, and he has knocked off every other competitor. Everyone else off the table. In Christianity, all whoever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. Islam, those to whom the burden of Torah was entrusted and yet refused to bear it, the burden of the Torah was given to the Jews as well as the Christians. They refused to bear it, are like a donkey laden with books. Wretched is the example of those who deny God's revelation, says the Quran in chapter 62 and verse 5. So when he used the words like donkey and wretched and thieves and robbers, deceitful and a godless state, how can pluralism now claim that all are equally true? You can't have a deceitful truth. How can you say they're equally good because the word wretched is there? How can they all be equally valid? They can't. So the written codes clearly claim exclusivity, each of them. Each religion claims to be the only way. So pluralism does not appear to be an established idea when the writings are examined. However, every religion claims to be the only way. So now we have multiple claims of being the only way. Each one of saying, we are the only way, I am the only way. So how shall we deal with such a claim? Let's take a quick break and come back to deal with it. All right, carrying on to deal with so many claims of being the only way. How do we look at that logically? Here it is. When there's more than one person making the claim that he is the champion, when there's two people saying, I am alone the president of the country, then we've got to figure out how to deal with it. So, looking at the options, number one, all are correct. That is absurd. We can't have two champions. We can't have two presidents of the country, one or the other, not both. So, all are not correct. Number two, all are wrong. Possible. That's not absurd. The first one is absurd. The second one is not absurd. All could be wrong. But how do we claim that it is wrong, that he is wrong? Well, the only way to claim anything wrong is, first of all, to have that which is right in your hand. Only then will you compare that which is in your hand, which is correct, to that which is there and call it correct or false, true or false, correct or wrong. We are still struggling with the reference point. And as we go along, we realize there's no way to call any of them wrong. How can you go to Muhammad and say, Muhammad, you're wrong? How can you go to Gautama Buddha? What knowledge do you and I have to do that? Go to Jesus and say, your Sermon on the Mount is all rubbish? Can you say that? None of us has either the knowledge or the authority or the position to say that any of them is wrong. So I could not call all of them wrong. Furthermore, if I called all of them wrong, we would have to dismiss all of them. But that would be totally absurd, because we cannot live on earth without some form of belief. Everybody believes something. If you throw them all off, we'll reach a very unreal situation of having no belief, and that's impossible. So we can't call all of them wrong. So if we can't say all are correct, we can't say all of them are wrong. There's only one option left, and that's the third one. Only one of them is legitimate and correct when in its claim to be the only way. So out of five, for example, each one saying the only way, the only real logical explanation of that picture is to say that one of them is telling the truth, that it is the only way. So that was quite an amazing point to reach. Crucial, amazing, pivotal conclusion. There is only one religion can make a legitimate claim of being the only way. Do you notice that? This statement that I'm making on the screen took me weeks, because I had to look at it from this way and from that way and from this way and that way. I looked at it in every way. Those three options, they are all correct, they're all wrong, or there's only one. Those are the only options that we have. And the first two have been dismissed by logical reasoning. And so we are left with this. There's only one way that is really the only way. Only one way. It's tough. And when I reached that, boy, the first question that crossed my mind, am I in that way or am I not in that way? Because there's only one. But that also leads us to a position in which we should find out which is that way. What is the significance of saying there's only one way? There are a few. Here are they. First of all, this conclusion was reached by a neutral person. Remember, we said we were neutral, humility, honesty, calmness, respect. We would look at both sides. We looked at all the sides. This conclusion was reached by a neutral inquirer. Number two, it destroys the concept of pluralism. It's not plural, there's only one. Number three, it has a strong application to any follower of any religion. For example, if you're a Muslim, then you can't endorse pluralism. You will have to first deny your Shahada and your Allah, and then you can go to become a pluralist. If you're a Christian, you cannot accept pluralism because you will first have to deny the words of Jesus, and then you can be a pluralist. So it is a strong application to followers. You cannot go to pluralism. Number four, it's a fundamental claim, and it's a basic claim. In other words, if that basic claim is not correct, then you have no claim to make. That's the meaning of fundamental. Number five, it is a most powerful, motivating claim. Every religion describes this earth as not actually the best place to live, not the best place to keep on living for eternity. It's horrible, actually. And so every one of them claims it's terrible here. So I am going to describe what is wonderful out there, and mine is the only way by which you can go from here to there. And therefore, it is the most powerful, motivating claim to say, only way. This is the only way. Don't go that way. Don't go this way. This is the only way. It also dictates the type of search we will do. And that is the point that we're going to look at for just a few minutes now. If only one option is the legitimate way, then how far ahead of the other should it be to claim the only way status? Is there any way in which we can identify that way? There are different religions saying different things, different doctrines and tenets. Can we compare apples and oranges? No. That's the meaning of that phrase, apples and oranges. You cannot compare them. Why? Because the universal standard has not been set and accepted. But can we choose between an apple and an orange? Even though you cannot really compare them? Did you get that? We can't compare, but can we choose? Is there any way we can choose? You know, friends, we can. If we put some factors over the features of the apple and the orange, we can make a decision. Here's what I mean. If I liked oranges, and I do like them, and there's a question of whether I should pick the apple or the orange that's on the table. I like oranges, so I'll go for the orange. But that day, I'm hungry, and the apple on the table is fresh, bright red, juicy, sweet, and the orange is just picked up from the ground, which was lying there for a week or so. It's all out of shape and actually rotten. So I like oranges, but which will I choose? I will choose the apple because I'm hungry, I want to eat. I'm not going to choose the orange. So did I choose between an apple and an orange? Yes and no. I did choose because that's the choice that was there. But actually, I did not choose between an apple and an orange, because if I was really to choose between an apple and an orange, I would have chosen the orange. But in this circumstances, I had to choose not between apple and orange, but between freshness and rottenness. And that gave me the choice, and anyone can see I made the right choice. So also, we cannot compare the doctrines and tenets of belief of the various religions, but we can look at another factor and use it to compare them. You know, every message from there came to this earth in the form of a story. There is no message to the human race without a story. So it is the story that we can go to, because from the story came all the doctrines, all the tenets of beliefs, all the philosophies of that religion came out from the story. Get that picture? Doctrines don't float around in the air. It has a context, and the context is the story in which it is brought to the human race. So we must confess we cannot compare the various beliefs and doctrines in a true and legitimate manner. We have no universally agreed reference point. However, if we turn from the beliefs and the doctrines to the stories and gave us the beliefs, we could evaluate the credibility of what I call the para-religious factors. The religious factors are the tenets and the doctrines, but the para-religious ones are the stories, those other ideas and concepts and descriptions, and we will look at them. In fact, questions regarding these factors will form the core of our process of comparison that we will be doing in the next few weeks. Here's something that we need to look at. If only one claim is the legitimate one, it need not be far ahead. Who is the Olympic 100 meters dash champion? I mean, the gold medalist. He was ahead sometimes only by 0.001 second. But he is the champion. Everyone else also ran. That is their designation, only one champion. So the one that is ahead need not be far out ahead. The slightest lead would be sufficient. Further, superiority need not be the critical factor. We like it to be, and we wish it to be, but it need not be. If one is clearly unique, different, that's the one. Only. See the words only that's on the screen? Only one, unique, only. For example, think now, I'm going to give you an example. We are going to say there's only one correctly colored marble. And in my hand, there are 4 purple, 3 blue, 2 green, and 1 red marble. Which is the correctly colored marble? Think. We said only one of them is correctly colored. And look at the question. Which is, not which are, which is, meaning singular, the correctly colored marble, again singular. Give you an idea? Which one of these then? Is it the purple, blue, green, or red? There are 4 of purple, 3 blue, 2 greens, 1 red. Which is the correctly colored marble? It has to be the red one because it's the only one that's red. All the others have 2 or 3. Only one, unique. So what we will do from now on, from the next few weeks, we will inspect the stories and the para-religious factors, not the doctrines, because the doctrines came out from those factors. We will look at those factors, ask some questions, and we will evaluate the weight of evidence looking for that red marble, the one that is so unique and sitting all by itself. It doesn't have to be superior. It doesn't even have to be far ahead. It just has to be unique. And that's what we will look at, asking a set of questions, and we will go through them one by one. What are we looking for? We are looking for the red marble, the one that says it is the only way, and there's only one of them that is correct. Did you get that? Come back again next time, and we will discuss this further, one by one. Q&A session now.
I'm kind of speechless because there are definitely some things in my mind right now. Um, but I'm going to open the floor because it's the time for questions and answers. And we definitely got a few questions for you, Dr. Pandit, tonight. So we're going to start with Michelle Watson Grant. How are you? Thank you for being a faithful viewer of the program. And Michelle asked the question: is the idea of the super soul similar to the idea of immortality of the soul?
Yes, indeed. The super means that which is above everything else. So it has to be immortal, it has to be eternal. So, in other words, that's the Hindu concept we were discussing just a moment ago. That's the Hindu concept that we are actually made up of what is called consciousness, the soul, and the soul is clothed with the body, and that's who I am. I am that consciousness clothed with the body, and that consciousness will never die. When this body dies, the consciousness flits to another body and continues to live. It's called the
Mm,
transmigration of the soul. That soul never dies. That's the Hindu concept, the immortality of the soul. You are right. The idea of the super soul. The super soul is the everything. We are bits of that everything. So the super soul is that everything which is everything. We are only one part. So we are one bitty little consciousness here, and you are one little bitty consciousness there, and everyone is one bitty little consciousness. But the total is called the super soul. And the correct word that we use in the Hindu and Sanskrit is Brahman. Brahman is everything. And you don't say just the word Brahman, actually, it is a sound. It's not just a word. And the sound is Om. You'll hear them saying Om. Om is everything, the most sacred sound in Hindu literature and in the Hindu understanding. And yes, it is the eternal.
interesting. Well, I know I have a question based off of the answer that you just gave to Michelle. So, if let's just say we follow that principle of, once this flesh or this mortal body dies, and we move on to the next, where does the concept of character development even begin?
Character development begins in, are you talking about their concept or the Christian
Yes,
concept?
their
Or
concept.
their concept. The character really is not as important as the merit you gain. So when you do anything good, you gain merit. You do anything bad, it's a demerit. So in the end, after your life of say 50 years, it's all counted up. And if your merit is more than your demerit, then in the next life you go up to a higher level, from say an animal to a higher animal. And if you're a higher animal, then you become a human. And among humans, from the lower caste to the higher caste, and that's how you go. So ultimately, not the question of your character, it's a question of how much merit you have. And when the merit is of that level, then you can possibly enter into the next level of existence, which is going off into paradise, which is Brahma Loka, the place. In other words, you don't come back to this earth in your cycles of birth and rebirth. That cycle is broken, and you flee, or you fly away to the abode of the planetary system, not on this earth anymore. So it's not the question of how well your character is developed, it is how much merit have you gained while you're living this life.
So then, my question then to a question based off of the answer is, who determines how many merits?
It's the Brahman, the whole. He never makes a mistake. So when the assessment is done, it is the truth of the assessment that makes the assessment. So you don't have any mistake there. In other words, we don't need anybody to do the mistake. The whole of existence makes that assessment, and that's it.
Interesting. 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 All right. Our next question is coming from Joanne Stephen. How are you, Joanne? How are you? And the question is, they all claim to be the quote, the only way, but the only way to what is the question?
Okay, like I did allude to when I was talking, I said every religion claims that this earth is not the final destination. In fact, it's pretty bad here. Everything is questionable, everything evil, suffering, pain. We have got a lot of that. So all the religions say there is another existence to which we can go, and each one says that they are the way to that existence. In other words, you escape what is here to that which is bliss, paradise, heaven. Those are the words that are used. So from earth to bliss, to paradise, to heaven. The way from here to there. That's what they mean by the only way. So there's the Christian way, there's the Buddhist way, there's the Hindu way, there's the Muslim way. They're describing the way that to get away from here and
Mm.
finally make it to that destination. That's the way.
Hmm. Our next question, once again, is actually from Joanne again. The next question for her is, and what manner does the way take should be considered before entering?
I did not understand the word manner. What manner does the way take? Uh,
Joanne,
I,
if you can extrapolate a little more in the comments for me, exactly what you mean by in what manner, and that would be a better way for Dr. Panda to come back and answer the question, just to kind of open it up a little bit more in terms of your thought process, so he can address that. So we're not going to ignore the question. Just if you can rephrase it just a little bit better for us, that would be awesome. All right, then the next question is back to Michelle Watson Grant. Do the major religions share the true principles? For example, universal principles like forgiveness, love.
oh, yes. If you look at all the major big religions, and I have looked carefully into the five that are understood to be the world religions, and that's Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism, Judaism, and Christianity. You'll find all of them, first of all, say that we need to get away from this world to that world. All of them say that when you live in this world, even if they say you need to gain merit, the way you gain merit is by following the correct principles. You should love, you should be helpful, you should be forgiving. So yes, those are basic principles that are found in all the religions.
And then, okay, I was looking over. Okay, um, here we go. All right, Joanne. If Hinduism assesses character by merits, that makes it a challenge to witness to them as a Christian.
Anything apart from Christianity will be a challenge. But first, you should know your Christianity. If you do not know the basics of Christianity, and most Christians, I'm going to say it, but kindly, most Christians don't know it. They know certain doctrines and they feel they know Christianity. Christianity runs far deeper than just doctrines and tenets of beliefs and philosophies. And most Christians know only this, only the tenets of beliefs. One, two, three, four. These are things we believe. Christianity, in its basic sense, is so different from all the others
Hmm.
that when you look at it, that's what we're going to do in the next so many weeks. We're going to see which way does Christianity actually think in its wavelength. Its wavelength is utterly different from every other religion. So when you do that, what you have to do is describe this wavelength and its principles, and describe the other principles and place them side by side. When you place them side by side, then you can see the vast difference. And it's no way that any other religion can be equated with this way. So I'm stating it beforehand. I usually don't, but
Hmm.
we do it this way because it tells us that anytime you want to witness, you should first know your own.
Hmm.
If you do not know your own, you are going to witness to something that is not really the truth of the matter. That's the problem. And that's why we have so much fighting, because we do not really state. We all we want to do is state that my tenet of doctrines, tenets of beliefs, and my doctrine is better than yours. That's all we want to do. If we want to do only that, it will lead to a lot of controversy. It will lead to a lot of actually ill feeling, resentment. Whereas if you calmly, clearly show the basic idea of what Christianity is trying to say to the world, while it is a challenge, I have found that the challenge is actually very intellectually enriching to discuss. But we need to know what we actually believe as Christians. And it's a big thing, but we will learn that. I will promise that we will go through the steps. And I hope by the time we are done with this series, you'll have a clear of idea of what Christianity really means and how we can actually talk about that. Right now, we are only talking about the word witness, not sure whether we're really witnessing. We need to learn that.
Awesome. Because I actually was thinking as you were answering the question, um, because even with Christianity, Dr. Pandit, there are so many different religions, and to even have a dialogue concerning, as you said, Christianity, the depths of Christianity and the approaches that different people taken over the centuries concerning Christianity, which even propels us to where we are in 2022. This faith believes this and this faith believes that. And um, until we really have a clearer understanding of really what Christianity is. Why is it Christ? Why is it even called Christianity? That's even
Yeah.
begin with that.
So your comments are really spot on in one sense. You will notice that we did not start talking about Christianity at all. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, even right now, we're not talking about Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
We started with the question, is there a God at all? You see, unless you settle certain basic foundational points first, you will float along and not have a strong base.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you set it one by one, so we do first God. Then we ask, can we know anything? That's what we did today. It's not relativism, we can know facts. And then when you look at the religions, there can't be many, there has to be only one. And of the one, we have to choose among the big ones. And then suppose, let's say, we choose Christianity. Once you go to Christianity, then you need to know certain things about Christianity itself. And also, like you mentioned, churches, it's actually, we should call them denominations.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how many denominations the people have counted among Christians? 33,000 denominations. So now you got to figure out what you're going to do with that kind of a picture. When you come to Christianity, you will know that there's a basic reference point in looking for the whether there's a God. There's no reference point. We have to make it. In looking for whether which religion to really espouse, again there's no reference point. We are making a reference point. If you noticed, we are making that reference point. We are saying that we're going to look at the para-religious factors, and that forms the reference point. But once you come to choose one, that will become the reference point. And I'm preempting myself by saying you will come to the book, the man.
Mm-hmm.
This combination of the book and the man becomes the reference point. And with that reference point now, then we will look at whatever else is the claim out there and pit it against this combination and then find our way.
And not to divert the conversation, because we're definitely going to go back to this whole question of postmodernism and how you have been unwrapping this a little bit for us tonight. In a strange way, there seems to be pluralism within Christendom, and yet there is an exclusive, how I'm going to pronounce
Exclusivism.
it, yes, within the faith. When you mentioned the amount of uh, denominations, but there really is one book, one man, one
Yeah.
God, and I'm going to stop there. But so that just kind of interest that piqued my interest. So I just wanted to kind of share that a little bit. All right,
So
we're
if,
going to go. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Pan.
so if we really understand the foundation and the reference point of one man and one book, even if you make a mistake after that, it's okay if you stand by the man and the book.
This is awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for that, Joanne. Thank you so much for your question as far that was posed. Let's see. We have a couple more. This is from, oh, wow, more questions have come up. I want to make sure I get this one. This was a new person who asked the question. This actually is from Romaine, if I'm pronouncing the name correctly. I hope I did. Does these religions claim to get you to bliss after you leave the earth? Does yoga claim to get you to bliss while still being alive on earth?
The word bliss is not a real technical word. So if you are meaning get better, then you can say both. You get better when you do yoga. Yes. But when you use the word bliss, if you are meaning that other life
Mm,
which has no negative connotations that we have in this life, then we'll have to use the words like heaven, paradise, nirvana, those words. So the word bliss could be used in both ways. So if you use the word heaven, then all of them claim that you will get to bliss only after leaving this earth. You don't have it here. This earth does not afford bliss, but you will get better on this earth if you do yoga. But remember, the word yoga itself should be clearly understood.
mm,
The word yoga is not exercises and deep breathing and controlled breathing and a control of your physiological systems by your mind. That is not yoga alone. That is part of yoga, and anyone can do yoga and be benefited. There's no question about it. It's just like health principles. You follow good health principles, you'll have a good life on this earth. You'll be healthy. Similarly, yoga, but the word yoga comes from a very specific understanding of who the yogin is. Yogin is the one who does yoga for them. A yogin is one who
mm,
is seeking to train himself in such a way that finally he will get to that bliss, not this bliss. And the only way you really can get to that bliss in yoga is to understand the place of Krishna, the eighth incarnate of the god Vishnu. If you understand him, yoga is to get to him and through him to bliss. That's yoga. We use the word yoga mainly to describe exercises, and that's fair enough, but that's not the real meaning of yoga. The
mm.
yoga is to get there, not just to do exercises here, although you'll be benefited. So the word bliss can be used in both ways. Good things here, yeah, we can have it on this earth, but the ultimate going there is what bliss is, and we should use the word heaven, nirvana, paradise, and those words, and those are not found on this earth.
Awesome. Um, Here we go. Michelle asked another question, and this is, I'm going to post it. I'm sorry. I'll do that. So since they share true principles, we can't just dismiss them. I mean, all the religions you were pointing out tonight, Dr. Pandit. We should build on what we have in common. And this is me adding that, is that possible?
What's the question again?
The question is, so since the different
Yes,
religions, they share true principles, we
yes,
can't just dismiss them.
yes,
We should build on what we have in common. And
yes,
I'm adding a question to her point, her
yes,
statement. Is that possible?
absolutely. You see, just because they have something that are in common does not mean they do not have something that are so different that they are impossible to bring them together. So when you look at this, I look at it in this way. In biology, you have something known as classification. For classification, you look at the common features. For example, if this has feathers and tubular bones and wings and beaks, then we call them birds. They're classified as birds, common features. But the other point is identification. Classification, you look at the common features. Identification, you look at the uncommon features that are different. In other words, a hummingbird is a bird, a vulture is also a bird, but the hummingbird is not the same as a vulture. You can't look at a vulture and say, oh, there goes a hummingbird. No, they are absolutely different. Why? Because there's irreconcilable differences between a hummingbird and a vulture, although both are birds by classification. So when you look at the common features, yes, they all have common features. But what you have to know is identifying them, and to identify anyone, you should know the uncommon features, that which causes them to be different. And when you look at that, there are irreconcilable differences between every religion and the others. There's no question of bringing them together on common ground. Common ground classification, yes, it's a religion. So that's a religion, this is a religion, they're all religion. But which one it is, when you look at the differences, you will find irreconcilable differences between them. And that is what I think you and I should know.
Mm.
Which are the irreconcilable differences in which you just cannot bring them together? And that is what actually causes them to be identified as A, B, or C. So we should know the common, we should know the uncommon points, or the common, or the points in which they're so different that you cannot bring them together.
Okay. All right. We're gonna. There are a couple of questions here that I definitely don't want to go by because and give you the time to answer them. Because I love these are newer people that are coming in to ask these questions. This is from Johans. I believe I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Could it be possible the existence of certain kind of exclusivism or relativism in the lines of our church today? And if so, how is it they manifested between us?
I think we are talking about 5 or 6 steps far ahead of what we are doing today.
Mm,
We are talking today about, very specifically, when you say relativism and exclusivism, we are talking about which religion. We are not talking about in the church, although it can apply to the church. So I would prefer not to go there right now. We have not done our basic study, and my aim, my passion is to tell us to please get your foundation clear. Most Christians do not have a foundation. Don't ever think that the storm is going to spare you. When the storm
mm,
comes, it's not going to say, did you get it right? We have to get it right now. And most Christians do not have a firm foundation, and we like to go to, instead of the foundation, we like to play around with the awnings on the third, fourth floor, and try to the trimmings and the curtains on on that window there. Uh-uh. Let that window be for now. Climb down and find out whether you've got a foundation. Most Christians don't have it. Don't pretend to have it. We know doctrines, we don't know our foundation. And that's why I'm taking pains to go through this. You will, it'll sound like I'm saying I'm the only one, but really, there's hardly any other seminar on earth that takes you through these steps that we are going through now. You have to settle those questions first, and you should know how to settle them in your own mind. Then you can talk to others. If we go straight to the fifth floor and start discussing the curtains and the color of the curtain and the type of the curtain you want, and the foundation is rotten, foundation is not being set, then what will happen when the wind blows? The
mm.
whole structure will come down. That is the danger in going straight to doctrines and discussing those points. So, good question, sir. But I would suggest, let's stay with what we are discussing now. We need to fix this now, because I know it is not fixed in Christendom.
Okay. And I will, can I add to that? Um, but please remember this question because when we get to this point, it'll be a great opportunity for you to bring this question back up again. So um, thank you so much. We really appreciate that. Okay, we're going to take one. We got to take one more question. And this is from, all right, the right stuff for you is asking, in these religions, is there a specific beginning, i.e., where are the origins of Buddha and the Hindu gods?
Beginning of what? You're asking the origins of Buddha?
Mm-hmm.
You mean his life?
Mm-hmm. That's what the
All right.
question asked me. Yes.
Well, if it's his life, well, then Gautama Buddha was originally known as Siddhartha. He was born to the Gautama clan. Father was a king, mother was a queen. So his earthly starting point was as a prince. His name was Siddhartha. So now, having said that, the question of what happened to that story, if you look at the original writings, the monks who lived at the time of Gautama Buddha, they were called the Theravada monk. A Theravada monk wrote this out, for example. He was born in Lumbini Grove and he died in Kusinara. In other words, he was born here, died here, just like anybody else. But after a period of time, it started changing. And then a few hundred years, it changed even further. And by the time the Mahayana form of Buddhism came around, which is about 700 years later to 1000 years later, that initial statement that he was born here and he died here dissolved into another story. He was not actually born here, he always lived. And he didn't really die here, he's going to live forever. So this is called a legend. Starts off as an ordinary story, then we add features one by one, add them, and it becomes superhuman and finally divine. That's what's happened here. So if you're asking the origins of Gautama Buddha, we can say the origins of his life are human, just like anyone else. But about 700 years later, they said, no, he always lived forever, and so many eons before he was born on this earth. And in fact, he was really an incarnate, which is unusual for Buddhism, but he was an incarnate of the Adi Buddha, the original Buddha, who never came down to this earth. He was just a phantom of that Buddha. So if you're asking what are the origins of Buddha, there are two. One, his human origins as a prince, his name was Siddhartha, and the later origins that were put into the writings about 700 years later, he always was early. There's no beginning. He always existed and he always will exist. So the question of beginnings is very difficult as far as testing them out. Historically, however, in history, he had a beginning. So that's the origin of Buddha. Hindu gods, Hinduism is a very unique religion in one way. It is not one thought, it's not monolithic, they call it. It's not one idea. Hinduism is not one idea. It began with what is called the pre Vedic Hinduism way back then, and then it came to the Vedic Hinduism, and then to classical Hinduism, which is described in the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, two big writings, the stories. And then there is the mystic form that later on came on. The Hare Rama, Hare Krishna movement is described as the mystic form of Buddhism. So if you say Hindu gods, the origin of the Hindu gods, we would
Mm-hmm.
have to say is in the writings with the earliest ones. All right. So now, if you look at the earliest writing that we have, the earliest structured writing is called the Rig Veda. There are four Vedas. The earliest is Rig Veda. In the Rig Veda are these words in chapter 10, I think verse 94. It says, who came first, the world or the gods? We don't know. We don't know. So, what is the origin? We don't know. They have not told us who came first, the created being or the gods. However, in the description of the Brahman, which is everything, there is a statement which says that actually Brahman exists forever, but out of a part of Brahman, the universe was created. When it was created, it is cyclic. So it will be creation and go through so many billions of years, and then it'll die out and it'll start it all over again. So the Hindu idea of time is cyclic. There's no such thing as a beginning point. It begins for that period and ends for that period, will start again. So today, for example, we are in the fourth age, Kali Yuga, fourth age of the four ages of one set. When this is finished, then we'll start the next one. And when the correct number of all these ages are finished, then everything is going to annihilate, including Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, everything. And then everything will start all over again from scratch. So it is cyclic in Hindu thought.
Now, Dr. Pandit, I would have generally at this point said good night to everybody and thanked you for joining in. But what you just said has opened up another series of questions. And here's one of them. And if you don't mind, if you have a few extra minutes.
I do.
Okay.
It depends on you all.
Okay. So the right stuff asks this question. I think you sort of answered it in your last comment, which was so most of the gods were human
No,
and keep changing.
no.
Okay.
Most of the gods were not human. They were always God. In fact, Brahman is eternal. In fact, Adi Buddha, who incarnated as Gautama Buddha, he's eternal. So nobody changes their status of being God. They are all God, claimed to be gods. So, short answer to that, they don't change. They are gods. But they come down here as incarnate. And the ones who are staying there as gods, finally they will also die, in Hinduism especially, specifically. But it'll start all over again. And what starts all over again, we don't know. We know only what is here. Remember, it goes to billions of years. One cycle is 8.64 billion years, just one small cycle. And there's so many cycles of that for it to be one age. And there's so many final ages, and then everything will collapse and start all over again. But that which is now is claimed to be Brahman, which is everything, described by the sound Om, and part of that is made into the universe that we are in. So they're not humans.
So the next question is if the right stuff for you, then they're not creators.
I'm not sure why that question. They can be, because they are gods. So even if they are temporary God, they're created. But like I said in verse 94 of chapter 10, it's not clear actually how the creation took place. That's why the question is, did the gods come first or did the creation come first? So it's not clear. We just leave it as unclear. But we cannot say they are not creators, because the Brahman, out of a part of his, it's an impersonal idea, Brahman, a part of it became the universe. So if we say Brahman is everything, then we can also say Brahman actually created the universe. So the question of creatorship is there in Hinduism. It is there in Islamic and in the Christian faith as well.
Thank you so much. The right stuff for you. Um, People are kind of glued here, and I be honest with you, so am I, because this is definitely opening up some more questions. Um, so, Dr. Pandit, okay, so in this, we're following this path. You know, you've taught us from the very beginning of just follow the question, follow the path,
Evidence, yeah.
and follow the evidence. So, what you're saying in terms of the creative component, to my knowledge, there is one book that distinctly tells you how creation happened.
Mhm.
Unless you can tell me that there are other books that say there is a cycle of creation and how it was formed, and that there is not going to be, and there's a beginning, there's an end, but not an ending of everything cycling over again, because now you have to also interject in my thought process. Okay, was trying to stick with this because it's science, philosophy, and metaphysics. Because it's the Christian element of me is starting to come out a little bit, and I'm trying to see how to phrase this. But there's a good and evil. Okay, there's a good and evil. I'm not going to classify it as sin, but we'll say good and evil. So that recycling again is recycling in the fact that we're starting all over again with a sense of we're trying to get to a what I put is a nirvana state or paradise state, or what's the whole purpose of recycling again?
There
Because
is there is no purpose. It's the fact. In other words, the claim is that it will completely annihilate to point zero. And what happens after that, we don't know. But it will come back again. Existence will come back in. Existence goes into non existence. It's not nirvana. Nirvana is what we go into. But the whole of existence is going to collapse into nothingness. And then it'll start all over again. What that is, nobody knows.
but and how that is that supposed to happen? Because you start interjecting things of, so we're talking about for those who believe in the Big Bang theory. So we're talking about going into nothingness, and then for so many
No, Big Bang doesn't go into nothingness. We are questioning where the singularity came from in Big Bang, and you have to go to nothingness. That's science. So this is not science. This is a claim of a religion
Mhm.
which says that the whole of existence is cyclic. There's existence, then there's non-existence over a period of billions of years, and then there is once the existence becomes non-existence, it comes back again. That's a religious tenet of belief. We can't put that with science because there's no explanation in a religious belief. Whereas,
Okay. No, no, I'm sorry. I really, in a way, I was actually tracking with you. I think my way of trying to verbalize the thought process did not come out the way I was intending.
uh-huh,
So that's just going to lead to another. Don't want to go down a rabbit hole because we can stay on this for a while. So, but no, that's an interesting thought process, and there's a lot to cover over the next weeks, probably months, as we're doing this program. So we'll leave it at this point, on my point at right now. But let me see if
but
there's
you made a good point, but that when you really begin to ask questions, one question will lead to the other, and you should be prepared. We mustn't say that we'll answer this and it's fine, and when it's answered, I've got it made. No, every question will open up another five, six questions, and you should be prepared, honestly, to take each of those as best as you can.
Mhm.
But through them all, you should find your way through a minefield,
Yeah.
because some of those questions are not good questions. They will lead you the wrong way. In other words, one of the biggest challenges I had was to choose not to look for the right answers, but to look for the right questions.
Mhm.
Because if you have the wrong question, even if you answered it right, you're going the wrong way.
Mhm.
So you have to be careful about choosing the right question, because some of them will just take you to bang your head against the wall. That's it. Nothing else. So we go through the minefield, and I hope that when we spend this time together, we will avoid those mines along the way and finally get to a good understanding of what this man and this book is. That's the goal.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, there are definitely more questions here, but I'm going to, for the sake of time, um, we're at the 8:20 mark. So if you don't mind, Dr. Pandit, for another 10 minutes, do you mind?
No, no. When I
Okay.
was in the recent speaking appointment when I was away,
Mm-hmm.
uh, the main part was the Q&A.
Mm.
I would present for 35, 40, 45 minutes. The Q&A would go on for 1.5 hours.
Okay. Okay.
So that's the usual way. I'm not surprised because there are
Mhm.
a lot of questions there.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other question?
Yes. Okay. Um, I'm going. Let's take some. Let's go with. Oh, here we go. This is the right stuff for you. Are they expelling evil with each cycle, or does it return in each cycle?
No. Evil and good in the Hindu thought. I'm thinking we are talking about Hinduism.
Yes.
You know?
Mhm.
Evil and good are two sides of the same coin. You cannot have only good. Evil and good are part of our existence. So when existence goes out, out goes good, out goes evil as well. So when it returns, like I said, we do not know what will return, but most likely, according to the thought, it will be back again. Evil and good will return because it's only one coin, two sides, evil and good. You can't have good, you can't have only evil. So in that basic difference of good and evil, you just choose to gain your merit. And no matter what the merit is, at the end of this big cycle, it's called the Maha, means big, the Maha cycle, when everything collapses, there's nothing left. So what begins will be absolutely brand new. So we don't know what that will be like. But we feel that the claim is that evil and good will also return.
Dr. Panda, the way you're answering these questions, you're only making it open for more questions. Oh my goodness.
Because we think as Christians, that's why.
No, actually,
We are linear in our thinking, we are not cyclic.
no. I think that
Okay.
no. I think the thought process right now is more of why would because just using the word evil, we're not even talking about from a religious standpoint, and what we classify as what is evil. Why would that need to be something in that thought process of Hinduism, in that thought process, that needs to be still something that has to come back again? There's two sides of the same coin, because evil in and of itself is brutal, it's conniving, it's every other adjective you can think of. And what we think of as even if we're halfway decent human beings that are watching and that will watch in the future, we can think of a plethora of things, hundreds of things that are just downright evil.
Yes.
And the fact and the thought process, and so I guess this other side of the Christian brain that comes in is, why would that even be something to be entertained that want to become back again because of just the evilness of evil?
We are talking, in your question, we are thinking that
Through the process, yes.
we are assuming that evil should be done away with. But that's a Christian thought. That's not Hindu thought. A
I understand
Christian
that,
will
yes.
believe, the Christian believe that finally evil should be done away with. It should be wiped off. But that is Christian. When you look at Hinduism, there is no such thing as wiping off anything. Existence consists of evil and good. That's existence. So if anytime existence is there, these two are there, the two sides of one coin of existence. Today, the Hindu thought is that existence will have both. What we should do as humans then is, like I said, do the good and gain your merit and escape your birth and rebirth cycle and go to nirvana and go to paradise. All existence will always have good and evil. Nobody will ever wipe it out.
Wow. Wow.
Mhm.
Okay. I think, oh, yeah, Michelle uh, Watson Grant classified it. So, dualism.
That's a word. Um, Dualism is it's a different concept, really. Dualism means both can be right. That's dual. In one sense, yes, it's dualism. You got good and evil, and there's no such thing as one existing without the other. But dualism has another concept in which you can have something and not have something, and both are correct. So, dualism is actually a little different concept, but it's nearly the same. Um, how shall I say this? Um, you can have existence, but also have, for example, an illusion of the existence. So, existence and an illusion of the existence, and both are okay. Whereas in normal intellectual logic, they are not okay, because you either have an illusion or you have the truth of that. You can't have truth plus illusion both equal. But in dualism, it's allowed to be equal. And that's the difficult part in understanding some of the deeper philosophies of both Buddhism and Hinduism.
Well, Dr. Panda, this has definitely been a very interesting session tonight for sure. And I think this is the longest we've gone. We've been here for like an hour and a half, so this has been awesome. Um, for those of you who'd still love to ask Dr. Panda questions, please email them to Patrice, Patrice, and I'll post up here at livingmanna.live. For those questions, you can send them there, and I'll be sure to make sure Dr. Pandit receives those, and he will definitely answer them at a later session. We may just do just a straight Q&A one day of different questions, so we can compile that, and instead of him making a presentation, just taking your questions, which will be absolutely awesome if we could do that. So please do that. We appreciate it. Um,
So,
yes.
So, what we're going to do now, we shifted out from the earlier thing about the existence of God and came to these
Mhm.
initial challenges to know anything at all, and whether we can have an idea of whether there's a real way. We settle that. Now, what we're going to do is looking for the red marble, meaning which is that way. So, we will ask the question and we will answer the basic questions that we will develop, make the question and answer them in the hope of being able to identify that way.
Awesome. 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 Well, everyone, please, I'm posting it here right here in the bottom thread. You'll see it go to right across the bottom of your screen. Any questions, any more questions you have for Dr. Pandit, please email right at the bottom, Patrice at livingmanna.live, and we would greatly so appreciate it. I know Dr. Pandit will as well, and we're interested to read your questions. So, everyone, thank you so much for joining us on this a brand new live edition of Science, Philosophy, and Metaphysics with your host, Dr. Pandit. And I'm the moderator, Patrice Delisser, and we thank you so much for being here. And Lord willing, we will see you next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, thank you so much and have a great, great evening. Take care.